Lord, open our hearts and our minds to be refreshed by your word this morning. Amen. Please be seated. On Thursday said the woman shouting loudly. But I do want to start by paying tribute to the women close to us, our spouses and in our families, and to those here in the St. Martin's community. On behalf of the men of St. Martin's, may we state that we honor you and will continue to seek to live out that honoring in ways that allow for greater freedom and healing and wholeness. The abuse and violence and disrespect of women in our communities is still unacceptable, and we are guilty of ignoring much of what is often self-evident. So forgive us, as we say in our confession. We've just used these words: through negligence, through weakness, through our own deliberate fault, we have not loved you with our whole heart. Today we continue our life song journey, and I'm given the theme of David and Jonathan, the song of masculine friendship, which appears so out of sync with Women's Day concepts. But is it? Because I'm convinced that in order for men to be able to honor our women, we need to begin with ourselves. We need to begin with our brokenness, our pain, our confusion. We cannot love others unless we've begun the journey of loving and accepting ourselves. And men in the 21st century are not in a good place in general. Masculinity is in crisis. And so we need to journey and work harder than before. Confession: I wrote most of the sermon on Women's Day in the morning because that was the only free time I had this week, because I was consumed with both a diocesan and then a provincial conferences and workshops and things, exploring the Church's compassionate response to same-sex relationships. So, how's that for a week? A week exploring same-sex relationships, in the middle Women's Day, and now I'm preaching on masculine friendship on Sunday. Easy to get a bit confused, but God's sense of humor. And there were some emotional times. So what can I do in 20 minutes exploring the archetype and the song of friendship between David and Jonathan? Very little, but let me try. Let me throw out some ideas for reflection, for challenge, for encouragement, for disagreement. Let's have fun. So I want to start by throwing out a word that may be new for some of you. Bromance. You know that word, bromance? Hey? So this is a new word. It only started in the 1990s. In fact, was credited to David Carney, the editor of the skateboard magazine, which you all read, called Big Brother. How's that for a title? Big Brother of a skateboarding magazine. And he used this word bromance specifically to describe the sort of relationships that were developing between skaters who were spending a great deal of time together. But in the early 2000s, it became much more widely used, particularly in the movie industry. So what is the definition of bromance? It goes like this: a close but non-sexual relationship between two or more men. 12th of January 2017. Barack Obama performed one of his last official functions as U.S. President. He awarded the highest award he was able to, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, with distinction, to his Vice President of all 8 years, Joe Biden. Time magazine article reporting on this event starts like this: it's no secret that former Vice President Joe Biden and President Barack Obama have a bromance for the ages. From birthday friendship bracelets to the Presidential Medal of Freedom, their relationship became an internet meme sensation throughout the tenure of their office. And if you know what a meme is, and if you're into that, it's fascinating to watch the pictures of them and the captions people have developed around that. There's even a Facebook page. So why this new word, bromance? Why do we need it today? Well, I think it's part of us trying to navigate through the muddy waters, what we may call liminal space of masculinity finds itself in. Bromance helps name a kind of relationship that has always existed between men, but in recent times has kind of got blurred in the wider human sexuality journey that we're on. In the army, on the team, in the pub, on the fishing trip, at the golf game, watching sport together, gathering around the braai. These are places of friendship for many men, places of safety where the nature and the nurture of bromance may be found. So what's the female version? Well, the dictionaries suggest womance, but I thought no. So I use a language that most of you would use, particularly your girls who are, your children who are besties. That's much better, hey? I suppose the male version is beasties or something. Anyway, David and Jonathan expressed a bromance. I need to say this because the closeness of their bromance exceeded what we would call a normal friendship. Unfortunately, some have tried to reinterpret this to include a sexuality expression, which I strongly disagree with, and there's no biblical foundation for that. As you listen to our reading, and later in our reading I'll refer to it again, you see an intensity and a depth of the relationship between David and Jonathan that transcended the politics of the day, their inherent rivalry for the throne, the confused father-son relationship between Jonathan and the increasing insanity of his father, King Saul. So this bromance, and I would suggest all bromances have a lot more characteristics, but I want to suggest 4 today. The first is, these are the 4 words: competitive, non-judgmental, straightforward, strongly loyal. Competitive, non-judgmental, straightforward, and strongly loyal. How does that look? What does that mean? Competitive. It's interesting that for many men, their deepest relationships form around the inherent competitive nature of their environment. David and Jonathan were both in line to become the next king. Rather than allowing that to divide them, it gave them an energy that united them. If you follow the tennis, Toronto Masters is on, and Kevin Anderson's doing quite well, although I believe he lost late last night in the semis to that young Greek guy who's doing so well. But he's in the doubles as well. Who's his doubles partner? And they're doing very well. Djokovic. Only a month ago, him and Djokovic were arch enemies across the Wimbledon finals net. And now they are together, the team, hopefully hoping to win in the doubles. Non-judgmental. So how do we see that today? I think it's best expressed for me in the banter that characterizes close masculine interaction. The banter that may appear to the outsiders hurtful, derogatory, offensive, but to the insider, it's the language of acceptance, appreciation of difference, and affection. David and Jonathan never allowed the other social factors, the military matters, etc., to mar their relationship by judging each other. Straightforward. In a close relationship, men are able to say it like it is. Get hot under the collar for a while and then move forward. David and Jonathan did this. In our reading today, they were challenging each other. Will you let your dad kill me? No. How are you going to prove it? Let's go out in the field and let's be quiet and let's talk about this on our own. Let's be straight with each other. When they could have been behind each other's back because one of them wanted to be king. Both of them did. What does that look like? And then lastly, strong loyalty. So think about it. Many men have been accused by their wives. Why are you still close friends with that old schoolmate who's obviously now living a life that poles apart from the life we're living? You've got little in common, especially if he's done a few questionable things in his adult life. Why? And so Saul is furious. King Saul is furious with his son Jonathan about his relationship with David. And in fury and rage, we see how that develops. So in our story, Jonathan said, I'll go and test my father. So he's doing the test. This is how King David responds. And you can put your own modern language onto this. He explodes with fury and even throws a spear to try and kill his son. Sounds like this. Saul's anger flared up against Jonathan, and he said to him, You son of a perverse and rebellious woman, don't I know that you have sided with Jesse to your own shame, the son of Jesse, and to the shame of the mother who bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die. Why should he be put to death? What has he done? Jonathan asked his father. But Saul hurled a spear at him to kill him. Then Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David. Jonathan got up from the table in fierce anger. On that second day of the feast, he did not eat because he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David. Jonathan's hope was that he would live to see David become king. That didn't come true because later on in the final battle with the Philistines, Saul and his 3 sons, including Jonathan, were killed. When the news came to David, his grief was overwhelming. He wrote a lament, and you know he was a poet and gave us most of our psalms. But in 2 Samuel 1, he writes this lament, and it ends like this. How the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. C.S. Lewis gave us how many loves? 4 loves. Do you remember that book? David Thoreau, who's the editor of the C.S. Lewis website, summarizes this kind of love. C.S. Lewis called it the philia love, friendship love. To the ancients, friendship seemed the happiest and most fully human of all loves, says Lewis. The crown of life and the school of virtue. The modern world, in comparison, ignores it. Why? Perhaps we don't know. It's time-consuming, the least celebrated, the one we could live without. Perhaps, too, as Lewis says, few value it because few experience it. Romance lends itself to conception. Affection enables us to have a sense of place and belonging. Charity provides a track to redemption. But friendship doesn't provide the same level of productivity, if we want to state it in a consumer mindset. However, Lewis thinks that friendship is likely the closest resemblance to what we will experience in heaven, where we will be intertwined in our relationships. We develop a kinship over something in common that the longing for camaraderie makes the friendship all the more wanted. In fact, Lewis would go on to describe it bluntly like this. Eros would have naked bodies, friendship, naked personalities. This love, free from instinct, free from all duties, but those which love has freely assumed, almost wholly free from jealousy, and free without qualification, free from the need to be needed, is eminently spiritual. We have found a natural love, which is love itself. Strong words from C.S. Lewis. There's a new book out on Lewis and Tolkien called The Gift of Friendship. These two giants, Oxford professors, gave the world the Narnia Chronicles and the Lord of the Rings, amongst much else. And they do attribute to each other their friendship as part of the crafting of these masterpieces, sharing together the world of myth and legend as they did. Jesus says to his disciples in our gospel reading, "My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything I have learned from my Father I have made known to you." This too is a friendship that is characterized by those four qualities: competitive, non-judgmental, straightforward, strong loyalty. Just briefly. Competitive, or we see it highlighted in the "who's going to sit at Jesus' right hand" debate amongst the Manna disciples. Non-judgmental. Seen for me, especially in the way Jesus still respected Judas over the meal table, knowing he was going to walk out and betray him. Straightforward, says to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." Strong loyalty, probably best seen in the bravado of Peter. "I'll never deny you. I'll die for you." So men, Jesus wants a bromance with you. And ladies, he wants to be your bestie. He wants an intimate, close relationship that has these qualities. On the competitive side, there's that we can always do more for God attitude, mission and vision, world conquering, kingdom building. On the non-judgmental side, he has given us a confessional structure. We can mess up badly, come clean, be cleaned, move on. No shame, no pity, no prisoners. We've been given a simple language of challenge. Paul describes it in his letter to his bromance, Timothy, with these words: "All scripture is God-breathed and useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work." And lastly, strong loyalty. Sell everything, take up your cross and follow me lifestyle. These are the qualities we're encouraged to have, each one of us, in the intimate relationship we share with our friend Jesus. He modeled them, and they are at the heart of the gospel message. For the gospel act of love, the ultimate friendship gesture, was that on the cross. The God who is love manifests the Trinitarian love, which invites us in, engages with us in a life-affirming, life-transforming way. John describes it in his letter, 1 John. Dear friends, let's love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and love is made complete in us. Amen.